Patriot-3 once existed like a god in the Middle East war, but it was broken by Russia on the Ukrainian battlefield. The Leopard tank was once considered the king of land warfare in modern warfare. It is an indestructible mythical existence. Now it was broken by Russia again. In January 2023, Germany announced that it would provide Ukraine with the first batch of 14 Leopard 2A6 main battle tanks, and subsequently provide equipment for 2 tank battalions. At the same time, it also agreed with its allies to provide Ukraine with German-made Leopard 2 tanks. Provided 31 Abrams main battle tanks. Britain had previously announced to provide Ukraine with 14 Challenger 2 main battle tanks. Poland, Norway, the Netherlands, Spain, and other NATO countries have announced to provide Ukraine with tanks. There are 321 of the most advanced tanks, and thus the Ukrainian Aid Tank Alliance led by the United States was formally formed. Since then, Ukraine has been declaring that it will launch a spring counteroffensive against Russia, but from spring to summer, until Bakhmut was captured by the Russian army, the counteroffensive did not start, and there was no new news about the follow-up topic of the Tank Alliance. On June 4th, the fabled spring counteroffensive finally began in the summer. This counteroffensive was carried out by several heavy armored brigades of the Ukrainian army in the east and south where Russia and Ukraine were in contact. Judging from the situation of the counteroffensive for about 10 days, the main attack direction was Zaporozhye and Donetsk. The position has launched an armored cluster attack, and the counteroffensive is still in progress. It remains to be seen how much results can be achieved. Perhaps the biggest highlight of this counteroffensive is not the counteroffensive itself, but a large number of advanced weapons such as tanks and armored vehicles aided by NATO countries have been put into the battlefield. From the battlefield videos and pictures released by Russia, many German-made Leopard 2A4/6 large main battle tanks were hunted on the battlefield, the myth of the Panther tank's invincibility was broken, and a large number of American-made M2A2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles and other equipment were damaged, which made the counterattack launched by the Ukrainian army look like a surprise. It looks a bit like the funeral ceremony of NATO's advanced weapons, and the Russian-Ukrainian battlefield has also become the cemetery of NATO's advanced weapons. On June 9, Russian President Vladimir Putin said, "The Ukrainian offensive has begun, which can be seen in the use of strategic reserves." However, thanks to the courage of Russian soldiers and the correct organization of troops, Ukrainian troops did not. The region has achieved the predetermined goal. On June 10, Ukrainian President Zelensky responded that he was in daily contact with military commanders and said that everyone is very positive now up. In my opinion, the Russian army's biggest achievement so far is that it destroyed many German Leopard tanks. Previously, the West thought that by forming a tank alliance with German Leopard tanks and American Abrams tanks as the main, in the spring counterattack, it has a crushing advantage over the Russian army, can penetrate the Russian army's defense line, and regain the 4 Udon states in one fell swoop. But does the destruction of the Leopard herald the bankruptcy of the tank union? In the future, I don't know what advanced land warfare weapons headed by the United States will provide Ukraine with NATO that can defeat Russia. Recently, NATO headed by the United States is clamoring to form an F-16 fighter alliance. Since a large number of American Patriot-3s have been destroyed on the Russian-Ukrainian battlefield before, it is necessary to retake Ukraine by forming an F-16 fighter alliance. Air supremacy is obviously difficult at present. If the Seahorse rocket launcher and the Leopard tank cannot regain land supremacy, then it is obviously difficult for the F-16 fighter jets to regain air supremacy. Now Ukraine's summer counteroffensive is still going on, because the large number of advanced tanks, armored combat vehicles, and missiles provided by NATO countries to Ukraine are still not in place, and as these weapons enter the Ukrainian battlefield in the future, the war will still present a tug of war, and the war will end shortly. I judge that this war will still be a long-term offensive and defensive battle, a tug of war, and a war of attrition near the line of control between Russia and Ukraine in the 4 states of eastern Uzbekistan, because the Russian army has found an effective way to destroy the Panther tank, the myth of invincibility. So whether it is the alliance of tanks or the alliance of fighters, it is foreseeable that Russia cannot be defeated. On June 9, the Politico website published an article titled "White House Anxiously Concerned About Ukraine's Counteroffensive," stating that senior U.S. officials are convinced that future support for the Ukrainian conflict and President Biden's global reputation depends on the success of Ukraine's counteroffensive. The article continued, "If successful, the West will continue to provide military and economic assistance. If it fails to meet expectations, Western support may dry up, prompting calls for a faster diplomatic solution to the conflict, thereby defeating this iconic international achievement of the White House. This article to some extent represents the psychology and attitude of the United States towards the Ukraine war. American politics and the Ukraine war are closely intertwined. Prospect. For Biden, Ukraine can only win but not lose, otherwise Biden's fate will be abandoned by American voters like Zelensky. This may be a weather vane for us to judge the future prospects of this war. But what we need to pay attention to is that the United States may have lost the ability to control the direction of the Russia-Ukraine war. Biden may not want to end the war now, but everything that happened in the Ukrainian battlefield tells us that the United States has become like Patriot 3, Hippocampus, and Leopard. It lost its dazzling brilliance and could no longer determine the outcome of this war. Now we conduct an in-depth analysis of the future trend of the Russo-Ukrainian war and its enlightenment to China from the following 8 aspects. First, the war to resist U.S. aggression and aid Korea was fought from 1950 to 1953 when the Armistice Agreement was signed. During this period, the situation on the battlefield was repeatedly fought over and over again. The war is not because the United States wants this Armistice Agreement without victory, but because the unfavorable situation in domestic politics and the battlefield in the United States forces the United States to sign the Armistice Agreement. The Russia-Ukraine war has been going on for almost a year and a half now. The Korean War Volunteer Army and the United Nations formed a confrontation dividing line on the 38th parallel on the Korean Peninsula. Formed a respective line of actual control. In my judgment, whether it is Ukraine's counteroffensive or Russia's defense, it will revolve around this dividing line, and the final agreement signed by the two parties is likely to be an armistice agreement rather than a final agreement to determine the outcome of the war. By the end of 2024, after the US election, if Biden steps down, Trump takes office or someone else becomes the president of the United States may agree to sign this agreement with Ukraine. Second, the Russia-Ukraine war has become increasingly out of control. The weapons provided by the United States and NATO to Ukraine are becoming more and more advanced. After the F-16, the United States and the West may also provide Ukraine with a large number of advanced missiles and drones capable of attacking the Russian mainland. After the Byzy gas pipeline was bombed, the Crimea Bridge, the Tolyatti, Odessa liquid ammonia pipeline, and the Kakhovka hydropower dam were bombed successively. The United Kingdom provided Ukraine with a large number of lean bombs. The depleted bomb was blown up in Ukraine and caused serious nuclear pollution. These have gone beyond war in the general sense, but some anti-human war methods. Therefore, we can foresee that if the war continues, more anti-human methods will be used, including the United States and NATO countries providing Ukraine with medium and long-range missiles to attack the Russian mainland, and providing Ukraine with tactical nuclear weapons to attack the Russian army and important cities in Russia. And the base, forcing Russia to escalate the war, or NATO secretly agreeing to the Polish army entering Ukraine to participate in the war, forcing Russia to launch a nuclear war against Ukraine, or against Poland and the United Kingdom. This extreme situation is not impossible. Since now, Ukraine has repeatedly attacked Zaporozhye, the thermal nuclear power plant can predict that once the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is attacked and a major nuclear accident occurs, then this war will truly enter the stage of human self-destruction, and it will become the first nuclear power plant destroyed in a war. The country's nuclear power plants may be attacked in wartime or even in peacetime, and whether Ukraine, the United States, Europe, or even the whole world will suffer the most serious consequences. Third, the United States and NATO seem to be standing on the moral high ground of safeguarding Ukraine's territorial integrity, but in fact this is a hypocritical illusion. In the Kosovo crisis that broke out at the same time as the Ukrainian war, the United States and Europe did not stand on the side of maintaining Serbia's territorial integrity, but intervened in Serbia's internal affairs by force and supported Kosovo's independence. Therefore, the Russo-Ukraine war was not what we saw on the surface. The rights and wrongs were very complicated, and it was also full of geopolitical games and contests among major powers. The fundamental reason for the outbreak of the Russo-Ukraine war is still the reaction of the United States to safeguard its own interests, NATO's unlimited eastward expansion, and Russia's irreversible retreat. War between. This is the first far-reaching war to break out in the world in the 21st century. Once Russia is defeated as the United States wishes, the consequences will be very sad, and China will also bear enormous strategic pressure. Therefore, the reason why the United States planned to launch this war, fueled the fire of this war, and promoted the continuous escalation of the war without letting the war end is all out of the strategic interests of the United States, out of maintaining the global hegemony of the United States, combating the and the purpose of eliminating strategic opponents. Ukraine is just cannon fodder. No matter what the outcome of this war is, Ukraine will only be a loser. Ukraine and the Ukrainian people will have nothing. This is where the evil of the United States and the tragedy of Ukraine lie. Fourth, the United States has made a major strategic misjudgment of the Russia-Ukraine war. The intention of the United States is to seriously consume Russia through war, drag Russia down through economic sanctions, and disintegrate Russia through color revolutions, that is, to accelerate Russia's collapse through war, sanctions, and color revolutions. However, the trend of the situation did not follow the script planned by the United States. Russia not only withstood the huge pressure from the entire NATO military force on the battlefield, but also withstood the comprehensive blockade and sanctions imposed by the United States and the entire West on Russia's finance, economy, energy, technology, and diplomacy. Judging from the current situation, Russia has neither collapsed nor fallen, but has survived the most dangerous moment. The main reasons for this are the following three important factors. One is that Russia is truly vast and rich in resources, rich in energy and resources, powerful military industry, self-sufficient food, and strong nuclear deterrence capabilities. These four factors enable Russia to quickly transform its national economy into a wartime economy, resist any external sanctions and blockades, and have a nuclear deterrent capability that makes the United States dare not end in person. Second, after the disintegration of the Soviet Union and the sanctions imposed by the US and the West on the Crimea incident in 2013, the Russian nation has already made ideological preparations for a complete break with the US and the West, forming a political atmosphere with a high support rate for Putin and a high degree of unity, the national consensus and the firm national will to resist the encirclement and suppression by the United States and the West. The third is the political, diplomatic, financial, and economic support from countries such as China and Iran, which enables Russia to maintain normal trade with other countries in the world when it is subject to comprehensive financial and economic sanctions and blockades from the United States and the West. This is an important factor for Russia to maintain domestic stability, break the economic and financial blockade, and maintain its national war capabilities. It is also Russia's ability to cooperate with NATO for 30 years. It is a key factor for its overall confrontational strength. Although China and Iran are not in a military alliance with Russia, this back-to-back strategic support and wartime support has an important role in Russia's life and death. It can be said that as long as China maintains good energy and trade relations with Russia and maintains normal financial exchanges, Russia will not fail due to weak financial and economic support. The above 3 points determine that Russia will not fail. As long as the war spirit of the Russian nation is not afraid of sacrifice for the sake of the country, and as long as there is continuous economic and financial support for Russia from China and other countries, Russia will be able to win this long-lasting war. In this all-round war to strangle Russia, the United States and the West will not defeat Russia, but will stimulate the cohesion and combat effectiveness of the Russian nation. Fifth, what we need to ask now is, how long can the US support for the Ukraine war last? Some people may think that this war was not fought on the mainland of the United States, nor did a large number of American soldiers participate. The United States only provided military aid and weapons and equipment, and it could be fought almost infinitely. However, things are not as simple as they appear on the surface. In addition to the President and the Congress, the attitude of the United States to the war also depends on the positions and attitudes of major capital groups such as the Military Capital Group and the Jewish Capital Group. In general, the Russo-Ukrainian war is a war between the global Jewish Capital Group and the American Military Capital Group to divide the dirty and the fat. It is a war jointly directed by these two groups with Ukraine as a proxy. Therefore, we can think that when the dividends of this war are divided up, it will be the end of this war. Of course, there will be exceptions. Because of Russia's heroism in this war, the US Capital Group has no profit, and it may also be the end of this war. Now that the US Military-Industrial Group has made a lot of money in this war, when the global Jewish Capital Group has looted Europe through this war, and continues to fight, it cannot defeat Russia and cannot share the huge dividends of Russia's fall. These capital groups will end this war and go to find the battlefield for the next war. 6. The next war in the United States must be around China, because both the Jewish Capital Group and the Military Capital Group need war. Only by war can they enjoy the joy of bloodthirsty, can they pass on the crisis, and can they be wiped out opponent. Although China has no subjective will to challenge their status, nor does it have the ambition to dominate the world, but China's rapid development and rapid rise is the biggest threat to them. As long as China continues to develop and rise, they will have trouble sleeping and eating. How can they allow others to sleep peacefully? Therefore, wars are provoked around China and even directly waged against China. Wars are used to contain China's development, sanctions are used to prevent China from surpassing. China's industrial upgrading and technological innovation are blocked by decoupling and chain breaking, and China is divided and destroyed by color revolutions. Therefore, the gangsters who planned and launched the Russo-Ukrainian War are or have copied a plan for a proxy war against China in the Asia-Pacific region. The purpose is to fully control China. This control is a kind of capital control. To change China's color through capital control, and to block China's development and transcendence through comprehensive sanctions and blockades by launching wars. This will be a comprehensive war that mixes military wars and political wars. Whether China keeps a low profile or compromises, the outbreak of war cannot be avoided, because China's development and strength have actually threatened their fundamental interests, their hegemonic status, and their way of obtaining huge wealth. In this way, China will inevitably become the target of their war, and it will inevitably become their biggest strategic opponent. They will either destroy you or be surpassed by you. They will definitely choose to destroy you. Of course, China has no choice. There is only one way to go. 7th, I have been thinking, since the outbreak of the Color Revolution, in pursuit of the freedom of the West, into the arms of the West, and against Russia, what exactly has Ukraine gained? This is a very typical country that was completely destroyed after the Color Revolution. Ukraine used to be a country with a strong military industry, advanced manufacturing industry, and agriculture. It was the most powerful country in the former Soviet Union except Russia. Development could have enjoyed a very rich and peaceful life. However, everything changed after the Color Revolution, when the Jewish Nazis took control of the country and dragged the country into the abyss of war. Not to mention Ukraine after the Russo-Ukrainian War, even before the war, Ukraine was already suffering from poor livelihood, economic bankruptcy, and social turmoil, so the wealthy Ukraine has become the womb of Europe. Now after nearly a year and a half of war, the economy of the entire country has been completely destroyed, the manufacturing industry has been completely destroyed, the country has been divided, half of the people have become refugees, the entire country has suffered a devastating blow, and the country is in danger of subjugation. Is this the ideal world pursued by the Color Revolution? Is this the good life that the West gave to the Ukrainian people? Obviously the Ukrainian people have been deceived and used. Whether it is the Color Revolution or the Russo-Ukraine War, the fate of the Ukrainian people has long been doomed. That is to be the cannon fodder of the United States and the agent of the war. Who really cares about the Ukrainian people? The misery and destiny? Is this all caused by Russia? Since Ukraine was chosen as cannon fodder by the United States and the West, and since the day when the Color Revolution broke out in Ukraine, the tragic fate of the Ukrainian people has been doomed, and this war has only accelerated the arrival of this fate. All Chinese who believe in the American and Western ideas should reflect on it. The westernized systems, ideas, and concepts given to us by the US and the West really have universal value and can really save China? Looking at Ukraine today we may be sober. 8th, it is obviously too early to talk about the war and peace of the Russia-Ukraine war, but the impact of this war must be significant and far-reaching. This war is a proxy war between the two nuclear powers of Russia and the United States. It is another proxy war between the United States and the nuclear powers after the Korean War and the Vietnam War. Although the war has not yet ended, we have seen that the war is escalating step by step. If the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is finally bombed or a nuclear war breaks out, the United States will not be able to hide behind it all the time. Judging from the current behavior of the United States to continue to escalate the war, the outbreak of war between Russia and the United States, the possibility of direct conflict is not out of the question. On June 10, Margarita Simonyan, editor-in-chief of Russia Today TV, said that Putin will soon issue an ultimatum on NATO's aid to Ukraine. She believes that the West provides weapons to Ukraine for free is to enter the war. One morning we will wake up to find that Putin issued an ultimatum the night before that if the F-16 fighter jets flying from the airports of these countries continue to attack Russia, if these weapons continue to be supplied to Ukraine, then we will consider these airports and ports as legitimate targets of war. Russia also has the right to declare, without an ultimatum, that NATO countries are legitimate targets. Although Simonyan is only predicting, but this scenario is not impossible. From the Patriot missile leak to the tank union to the F-16 that is being pieced together fighter aircraft alliance, and the medium and long-range missile and UAV alliance that may appear in the future, it is impossible for Russia to fight against more than 30 NATO countries all the time without falling behind. At that time, the situation may become unmanageable and uncontrollable. We hope that the United States will not go too far, and will not push Russia into a corner, otherwise this Russian-Ukrainian war will really evolve into a world war between Russia and the United States in the 21st century, or between Russia and the United States. Nuclear war. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is still going on. The available information shows that although many Leopard tanks have been destroyed, Ukraine is organizing more troops to launch a more violent attack in the direction of Zaporozhye and Donetsk. This kind of attack, regardless of losses and consequences, may make progress at a certain point in Russia's long line of control, and we will observe slowly. But the war will not end here, and Ukraine will not regain its territory, and the war will continue for a long time. For Russia, the Russo-Ukraine war was a life and death battle for the country and the nation, and there was no room for loss. If Russia loses this war, it will likely cause the Russian Federation to collapse in the style of the Soviet Union, and the United States will win Russia without a fight. Therefore, if this war fails, it will undoubtedly mean the destruction of the country for Russia. The reason why the United States has to continue to increase the bet on this war is because Biden believes that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the United States to destroy Russia. If Russia can be defeated through war, sanctions, and color revolutions, then in the future, the Sino-US power battle in China, the United States will not be confronted on both sides. Therefore, the United States will not let go of this opportunity to destroy Russia in one fell swoop. Of course, this kind of opportunity may be a huge trap. Once it falls into it, it may be like the Korean War and the Vietnam War. The power invested in the entire country still ends in failure. This is like a double-edged sword. It may be able to kill, or it may be counter-killed. War is eternal, peace is temporary. On the one hand, we must fully support Russia so that Russia will not be destroyed by the United States and the West. On the other hand, we must make full preparations for a bigger war and a more severe situation. The current Russia-Ukraine war is a matter of life and death for Russia. The future war between China and the United States will also be a battle of life and death for China, but it will be more cruel, more dangerous, and more difficult. Get ready to fight. Now Russia is at the most dangerous time, and China will inevitably enter the most dangerous time in the future.